from allaboutthehouse.com. In this video, I basically want to show the construction of one of these shadow boxes, one of these wall frames. There's another video that I had made recently where I talked about the design of this room in particular, and if you take just a quick look around the room here, you can see that a lot of work has already been done in here. In fact, down to the last 3 wall frames. So let's talk about specifically how to construct one of these now, design aside. You kind of come down here, you can see I've got the outline here, and this has all been very precisely measured. And of course this is this green is part of the visualization that I talked about in a previous video. You can see this is box H. If you pan to your right over there on the ground, you'll see there are 3 piles of pre-cut pieces of trim. The sawing is really, you have to be incredibly precise. And what I found is, once I have a box like this laid out, and I measure each one precisely, it's much more efficient to saw up multiple kits like that, if you will, than to try to do one box, saw it, put it up, saw it, put it up. It's much faster, much more efficient to do that. So we're going to do box H. The other thing to point out here are these gray lines which indicate the studs. I cannot stress how important it is to know exactly where your studs are when you're doing something like this, because take a look at this bottom piece, which I've already put up. You'll notice that I've got a nail sunk directly into this stud, another nail sunk directly into this stud. I always put a nail about 1.5 inches from the ends as well. I didn't need to over there because the stud was there. If you put a nail too close to the end, you can crack the wood. You don't want to do that. But the stud locations are imperative because that's where you're going to get a real bite. And, at least where we live, when homes are constructed, when they're framed, the studs are on 16-inch centers, more or less. If I put a nail into something that's not a stud, like a pipe, that's really bad. So not only do you want to know where your studs are to get a good bite, you want to know where your studs are so that you don't put a nail into something that's not a stud. And if there's any ambiguity there, if you're not sure, you drill a little hole in the sheetrock very gently, punch a hole through with an awl, make sure what's back there is wood, not pipe. Alright, so let's put this together. Okay, so as I assemble these, basically I use some type of caulk. I like to use Phenol. Had good experience with it. Essentially what I do is 2 steps here. I take the piece that I'm about to put up. Even though I've measured this as carefully as I could and cut it as carefully as I could, you always want to just give it one last visual inspection. This is nice and tight in the corner here, and if you can see, that's right to the guideline. That's looking pretty sweet. So now I'm going to take that down, and I'm going to put a very light application of caulk on the back here. I don't want this to ooze out when I put the piece up, so it's thin enough to get a good bite, but not thick enough to make a mess. Put this back into position as I had it before, using my guidelines. And even with a little bit of caulk on it, I could actually let go a little bit. It might fall, but I've got a little bit of tackiness there. I grab my nail gun very carefully. You have to be super careful this doesn't move. Now there's no stud behind this particular piece of trim. So these 2 nails aren't doing a heck of a lot, but they'll hold it in place a bit, and when that caulk dries, we get a really good bite on the back. Okay, so I just put the right-hand side up as well, the exact same procedure as before. And now I take my final piece, and I test it for fit, and I'm very happy that it's going to fit beautifully. Now I cheated in that I tested it for fit before we started shooting this video, so I know it's going to fit. One trick though that you might want to think about, before you put this final nail in your second piece, whether it's the left hand side or the right hand piece, which is going to catch the top piece, test for fit. And if your top piece is ever so slightly too big, or maybe ever so slightly too small, you can adjust this a little bit, cheat a little bit, so you don't have to go back to the saw and maybe cut a new piece. You don't want to do that if there's a big problem. You definitely don't want to rush stuff like this. You want to get it as close to perfect as possible. But I've got my right and my left hand side up, And I like to do the top piece last because gravity essentially holds it in place. It's a cap. It caps right on. So there it is. Again, I go to my studs, making really sure this doesn't move. And even though there's no stud here, just for safety's sake, about 1.5 inches from the inside. I mean from the miter. Alright, so there we go. So there's our shadow box. Now that being said, again, a lot of work has been done in this room, and I'm happy to say there's only a couple of wall frames left to go. But if you look at these miters, and if you look at these nails that we just sunk through this trim work, we have some work to do there. This one frame over here, I started refining a little bit. And you could read more about this in some of the articles on the website. But if you see here, I put another thin application of caulk, and I'll do the same thing on this side. And if you look very closely right here, there's actually wood filler over that countersunk nail from the nail gun. So ultimately, this is all going to look very homogeneous, and then when I paint, if all is perfect, you won't see any of the miters, you won't see any of the countersunk nails. And take a look here at this miter. I mean, it was a good miter, but now with the filler in it, with the wood filler, it's almost invisible. And under paint, it's going to be very invisible. Alright, so in a nutshell, that's how I build these boxes, these wall frames. Again, this is Mark from allaboutthehouse.com. And if you're interested in doing something like this, you can find lots more photos and resources on the website. Thanks for watching.